Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Beacon Rant. And my name is Roger Landry, and I'm joined every week by the lovely Paula Mathers. How are you today, Paula?
Doing great. Awesome.
Well, that's great. I alluded last week to a show that was going to be a little bit more hard-hitting. Although I don't know if you call it a rant. I guess every show should be hard-hitting, huh? I don't expect that my blood pressure is all that level on
Thank
any
you.
one of these shows I do, because these are all subjects and topics that we intend to rile you a little bit. Because if they don't, then you're listening to the wrong radio show. You're talking to the wrong people. There are too many things wrong in this world today. There are too many things wrong in America today for it not to piss you off, at least on some level. So that was the inspiration behind the adding the rant on to the end of the Liberty Beacon. And for all who don't know, the Liberty Beacon Project has our flagship website is www.thelibertybeacon.com. And we do have another website, and we will have a third one coming up soon, but we won't discuss that one quite yet. The second site is www.protection.thelibertybeacon.com. And whereas the Liberty Beacon, our flagship site, pretty much covers the topics of anything you could fit into the area of tyranny, whether it's GMOs, chemtrails, vaccines, imperialism, militarism, politics in this country, tyranny. That's basically the political aspect. But the protection site is a child pornography and pedophilia site, and we definitely have a big black spot for that. We push back hard against it, and Adam White, who is the admin for that particular site of ours, leads a team who does some great research into pedophiles, and there have already been some ramifications due to the investigations they've done. So there are many aspects of the Liberty Beacon Project, and they are growing. Again, we cover politics, we cover health issues, we cover child pornography and pedophilia, and there are a couple of new ones on the horizon. We are not just focused on, although a large portion of our focus is on the United States, because as American citizens we know how broken the system is, but we all have to realize that the global system is broken. And this is being done intentionally because you really can't change a system unless you either tear it down or totally negate it and rebuild it. So everybody who listens to this type of show is well aware of what the New World Order is, and that's become almost a passé term. Now it's just the New Order or global governance. You hear a lot more people say that because it carries less negative connotations than all the
I
pushback.
noticed that global government slipping in there like that.
Global governance is basically the catchphrase now, but you can't bring the entire globe, especially a country as powerful as the United States, into a global government until you bring it to its knees. The system has to be broken, and broken bad, so that they can step in and be our saviors, portray themselves as the saviors of humanity. This is what we're going to do. Everything's going to be fine. Just follow us. Give us your undivided attention, your undivided loyalty, and we'll take care of you. This is happening in the United States on a grand scale. Tonight's show the topic is what we have already lost. And Paula has a copy of, or a link to, an essay or a commentary I wrote about this some time back. And I've done some updating to it, because what it does is it states unequivocally, and it's not a complete list, as much as we're going to go over. You need to understand that this list is a partial list. But these are the blatant, in-your-face issues, the rights and freedoms that we used to enjoy even if it was only 10, 15 years ago, and some of them as much as or as little as a year ago. These are the rights and freedoms that have literally been taken away from us. You can no longer claim them. So for when you stand up to sing, any patriotic song about the United States, and it includes the words "the land of the free and the home of the brave," more and more that line or those lines are becoming bullcrap. Now, the home of the brave part, I would hope, because the only way we're going to save this once great nation, and I'm sure we are all still Americans at heart. We all love this country at heart, but we all realize and we rail against how broke it is and the tyranny that is being perpetrated on us. Today's show is going to go through a lot of the aspects of this tyranny. And some of the things that we're going to discuss, some of you might not be aware of. But again, a lot of people who would listen to a show like this are pretty much aware of a lot of what we're going to talk about, but we'll give some details on it. The one thing you won't hear is you will never hear a show like this, or you will never even get a portion of the information we're going to give you tonight on any mainstream media show. They're not going to talk about these things. Okay? Because they were instrumental in conditioning the populace in this country to allow this to happen. You can't take away a society's rights and freedoms, which is the society is based on its rights and freedoms. You can't take them away unless you convince a massive amount or a majority of that population that this is what we need to do. This is for your own good. This will protect you. This will provide you security. And this wasn't done in a day. This was done over decades, a little at a time. We were spoon-fed. It wasn't shoved down our throat. We were spoon-fed it, a little bit at a time. And any lie, if it is repeated enough, eventually becomes the truth. Last week we talked about something that a director of the CIA, his name was Casey, and this was 31 years ago, he made a comment. And it was about the disinformation program that the CIA was running. And what he stated was, and this is a quote, and I might not get it word for word, but it is a quote, we will know that the process has worked when everything America believes is false. Now, that was between 30 and 31 years ago. Do you think they stopped lying then? Or do you think that it has been cumulative? That this was a project that has been in play all along?
Built on over the years.
Oh, absolutely, Paula. And what we see is that slowly but surely, and it started long before Bush, but it didn't become blatant until Bush and 9/11. That gave them an excuse to offer us security, to offer to protect us. Well, if we're going to protect you, then we have to listen into your calls. If we're going to protect you, then we have to do full body scans at the airport. If we're going to protect you, but yet it's being sold as protection. It's being sold to give you peace of mind. But if you look at the ramifications of each and every one of these little tiny things we gave up, and it's very cumulative over time, what you find out is it's your freedoms and rights you've surrendered. And when I start to tell you exactly which ones you've lost, and we start to state them in reference to the rights and freedoms that are mentioned in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, some of you are going to push back and go, no, we still have that right. No, you don't. You just have the perception. You just have the fantasy that you still do, and they allow that because it keeps you passive. But in fact, by law, by executive order, those rights have been resigned to the scrap heap of obsolescence. They don't exist. So let's start off. And Paula, I think I'm going to put this up at the beginning of the show instead of the end. I do a thing called on Facebook on my wall, because there are about 9,000 people on my wall, 5,000 friends, and close to 4,000 subscribers, or I think they call them followers now. So I do something called Just My Thoughts. And when I have a thought that really strikes me, I find an appropriate background and I put the words on a picture and I post it under the title Just My Thoughts. Now, with what I've just told you and the lead in for what we're going to discuss today, this was the Just My Thoughts of last night. And think about how appropriate this is, okay? When it becomes seditious to speak the words or practice the concepts our founding fathers fought and died to bequeath to us, then tyranny is no longer a possibility, it is a guarantee. God save America. Now stop and think about that. Let's pull that apart first, then we're going to jump into what we have already lost. Not what's going, what's gone. When it becomes seditious to speak the words, when I was a kid, when I was a young adult in the military, if our government called you a patriot, a chill went up your spine and you threw your chest out and you were proud. That was praise.
Yeah, it sure was.
Now, if your government calls you a patriot, it means you're seditious. If you take a look at the list of people that are being tracked and followed on Facebook, on the internet, on your Google searches that are looked at, the word patriot is a flag word. Think about that. Freedom is a flag word. Unalienable rights is a flag term. These are terms bequeathed to us by the men who died to bequeath to us this nation and our ability to practice our unalienable rights, our freedoms, our liberty, to be patriots towards our nation. This doesn't exist anymore. Thus, tyranny is no longer just a possibility. People, it's now a guarantee. We are seditious. Everybody listening to this show is seditious. We all talk about patriots. We all talk about unalienable rights. We all talk about liberty. But yet every time you type that into a Google search or every time you put it into something that you're posting on Facebook, it's flagged. My, how the mighty have fallen. So let's start to talk a little bit about what we have already lost. And most of you are going to be able to follow along. I wrote this several months back. All of it is still very, very current. There are a few I'm going to add on after we get done going through this this commentary, okay? But first off, and I'm sure a lot of you have read this and you've chuckled, I'm going to give you a warning. If you're a sheeple, avoid this program, because it's probably going to give you a severe or a total attack of anxiety. You're not going to believe what I'm about to tell you, but each and everything we're going to discuss can be backed up with facts. Either a law passed by Congress, or an executive order, or whatever. A document that's been released, whatever. This is reality we're talking about. This isn't a maybe anymore. Okay, what follows is a statement of reality. It's not what could be.
It's okay.
Let's face it, as we've already discussed, over the last, especially the last decade, since the beginning, actually since Bush Sr., but at an accelerated rate since Bush Jr., okay, we have seen our rights so slowly usurped, okay? We have seen Congress complacent with our presidents, and what we have seen is a total usurpation of many of our freedoms and rights. Okay, now you have to understand again, this is a partial list of the freedoms we can now, by law or executive order, be denied. And again, I use this term in the land of what used to be the free. Circumstances that prevail for the powers that be to enforce this tyranny are what we're going to discuss. It is not an all-inclusive list. I will probably stress that many times during this conversation, because I don't want you saying or sending to me, but what about? There's a lot of what
Yeah,
about.
oh, you left this one out.
There's a lot of what abouts, but let's discuss the ones that really ring true to putting a cap on your ability to call this the land of the free anymore.
Yeah.
Let's start off with you've lost the right to assembly. H.R. 347, giving the government the ability to arrest and bring felony charges against anyone engaged in political protests anywhere in the USA, passed by Congress. Now, it's not enforced a lot because we still do congregate. We still do assemble. But if at any point they wish to pull out that club and start beating you with it, they can. Up to 10 years in prison. This is not a joke. You have also lost your right to speech. If you can't assemble, you can't voice your opinion. Also, H.R. 347. Also, again, passed by Congress. So in one fell swoop there, they have basically decided to pick and choose where you can assemble. Now, a lot of you probably have done a little research on H.R. 347, and you will also understand that there are severe restrictions and severe penalties for assembly or protesting in front of a government building. Well, let me ask you a question. With what's going on in this country today, what other building are we going to protest in front of? It's our government who is perpetrating this tyranny. So basically what they've done is made themselves immune from protest and assembly. You try to protest out in front of a government building, they can send the troops in. And by the troops, I mean either Homeland Security or local police or state police. And not in the too distant future, the military. But that's another show. And that one, again, we're building here in tyranny. Today, excuse me, whether you believe it or not, we're at the bottom rung. By the time we get done with this series, the tyranny will be so blatant. It'll be like throwing a habanero in your mouth and chewing it, and the fire will spread. H.R. 347. It's a reality. It's been around for a while. Okay? At this point, we're getting the soft treatment. But we, the people, are on the move. We're building in numbers. We're building in agitation. We've had it up to here. The bullshit is just getting too much for most of us. They realize this is going to culminate in massive protests and assemblies at the level we used to see during the Vietnam War. Now remember, I'm going to be 59 in a couple of weeks. I remember the protests and the marches for the Vietnam War. I remember the anti-war rallies. I remember being allowed to protest and assemble in front of or surrounding government buildings. I remember not being thrown in jail because I sat out there with a megaphone and screamed out, how tyrannical the government was. Guess what? Those days are gone. This is a law. They do it legally now. Let's go to the next big chunk of tyranny. Okay? The president no longer has to go to the Senate to approve his czars. There are certain level, maybe the top 4 or 5, that he still does, and I imagine that that's going to be jerked away from them pretty damn soon too. But any second tier and lower czar that he wishes to appoint, such as appointing an ex-vice president of Monsanto to be his czar to the FDA. Give me a frickin' break. Do you think that would have sailed through the Senate had he had to have their approval? It might have eventually gotten through because Monsanto owns a large portion of our representatives. And this is another thing, a little offshoot here, people. How many of you hold your local representatives responsible? And by that I mean, do you have a clue what their voting record is? I can probably walk into a crowd of 100 people, and I can just about guarantee you that less than 5 of them would have even a concept of what their representative, congressional representative, or their senator voted on, or how they voted on it. How the hell do we hold these people's feet to the fire if we don't hold these people's feet to the fire? You need to be aware you are all politically active. You are activists by the very definition of the word, or you wouldn't be listening to this show. You need to hold these assholes accountable. You need to know how they vote. And if you don't, when you get off this show, when you stop listening to this show, go to the internet. They're all on the internet, and their voting records are all on the internet. Find the recent bills that have passed that have pissed you off and find out how your representatives, your congressmen, and your senators voted. Find out. Because 2014 is the litmus test for us. If we send 86 to 88%, which is the re-election rate for Congress, we've been screaming about the tyranny for a dozen years, yet we keep sending these idiots back. 86 out of 100 of them we send back to do the same freaking thing over and over again. Find out how they voted, because the litmus test for us is going to be 2014. Are we for real, or do we just blow a lot of hot air? My motto is 2014, time to throw out the trash. And I mean that from my core. So take the responsibility of finding out how the hell these morons are voting. Are they representing you? And if they're not, splash it all over Facebook. If you have a website, put it on your website. Send them emails. Make phone calls. I don't care what you do, but damn it, do something. Because we have been riling, that I'm aware of, for at least a dozen years on this tyranny, but Congress and the Senate has an 86% re-election rate. Does that even make sense to anybody listening?
It just blows me away.
It proves unequivocally that we're screaming and hollering, but we're not holding their feet to the fire. We know they got people like Boehner, sorry about that, and others, whether they be Republican or Democrat, have been there for many, many years. We know that, by God, they're committing tyranny time after time after time. Sponsoring and voting on bills that do nothing but usurp the rights we're talking about today, but yet they get reelected over and over and over again. Some of these people have 30 plus years in Congress. And don't give me this crap about they've got all the money on their side. Money don't mean shit if you've got the numbers. And don't give me this crap that the voting is rigged. All you have to do is demand a paper ballot. You do not have to use an electronic voting machine. You can go in and demand a paper ballot. You can change the voting system in your locale if you wish to. You can sign voting affidavits. There are many, many ways to get around voting fraud, not voter fraud. I hear that title way too many times. It's not voter fraud, it's voting fraud. Because voter fraud, that basically states it's you and me committing the fraud. So I'm about to go back onto topic, but this is vital. We're never going to change this if we don't hold these assholes' feet to the fire. You do that by checking their voting record at least once a month. There are bills going through Congress and the Senate regularly. Checking it once every 6 months doesn't do you a damn bit of good. Once a month, once every other week. Hold their freaking feet to the fire. 2014, remember this. 2014, time to throw out the trash. People, this is our litmus test. Believe me, anything past 2014, if we haven't made a statement to these politicians in 2014, we might as well close up shop and go home. There isn't going to be
I'd like to
enough
see
of
a
us.
big overhaul, just
It has to be.
chairs emptied, people out the door.
Well, only 50% of Congress comes up. Okay, they get 2 years. Okay, so and they're staggered, and senators are every 6 years. So you're only going to get like 30% of them. But if we make a big enough statement, then the ones that didn't have to be reelected at that point, the senators that didn't have to go up for reelection, they might wake up. They might say, "Oh my God,
True.
what's happening here? Maybe we better listen to what our constituents say." And if they don't, then we recall these assholes. That is also within our ability to do. All you need is a petition with enough signatures on it, depending on what your state says, and you can recall these idiots. But all of this is up to us. 2014 is our litmus test. If it goes by with us doing nothing, then close up shop and go home. Don't bother to listen to these shows anymore. Don't go on to Facebook and make political statements, because we have proven that we're all show and no go. All right. There's a bit of a rant for you right there, Paula.
Absolutely. Good one, too.
All right, now let's go on. Okay? We talked about the president no longer requiring Senate approval for his czars. Okay? And this,
How convenient.
well, it gives him impunity from congressional checks and balances. Our entire governmental system is set up on checks and balances. If one branch does something really stupid, then the other two branches can hold him accountable or them accountable and pull them back into line. But when you throw all of the power to appoint the people who run the agencies that basically run the country, you're handing them dictatorial powers. Now, this was S679. This will allow people like Obama, who we know does this anyway, to consolidate powers never before even considered by a presidential, by a sitting president, just due to the relationships he may already have with the people he's going to install into these supervisory positions, such as, oh my God, let's go back to Monsanto. What is the most evil thing you can do for the health and well-being of the people of this country when it comes to the food supply? Jesus, you put a vice president of Monsanto in charge. That's freaking insane. But there was nothing nothing the Senate could do about it because of S679. Let's go on to the next one, okay? This is the big one. This is the one where tyranny has been literally slammed in our face several times. Right? And I have not seen one big push. I've seen a lot of bitching. I've done a lot of bitching. Okay? But I haven't seen a huge physical assembly, rally, protest. And that's the NDAA rider. The one that gives the president or his appointed officials the ability to declare you an enemy of the state. Okay? Now this was perpetrated by Bush and railed at by Obama, stating that this wasn't right. And then he got into office, and he not only did he fail to keep his promise and negate it, but he even threatened Congress when it came up for renewal. Okay? Congress was going to add into this bill a clause that stated it did not apply to American citizens. Or, basically, it would give us the right to have our day in court prior to being stuck away forever and ever. The White House, at the last minute, got a hold of the congressional leaders and threatened them that they had better leave the clause in place and intact. And Congress stuck their tail between their legs and did exactly what the White House demanded they do. You can't make this up. This isn't fantasy. These are things that have actually happened under pressure from the White House. Okay? The clause to protect the rights of American citizens for due process was stripped from the bill, leaving the tyranny of the bill intact. So there were, by this, a few congressmen out there who said, hey, my constituents are really climbing up my ass and we need to do something here. So let's at least give them their due process before we throw them away and lock, or throw them in jail and lock them up and throw the key away. But the White House said, no. That doesn't work with our plans. You leave it the way it is.
So they can detain anyone indefinitely for no reason.
Without any proof, without any due process, they just have to state when somebody asks them why, because they are an enemy of the state. Period. That's it. You're qualified. You're in jail forever. So your right to due process, which is what all this gets to, is gone. All right, now let's take that a little bit further. From the same gentleman who brought you the tyranny of the NDAA not being modified to give us due process, we also have a president who's taken it upon himself to allow himself to determine which Americans he can pop in the back of the head with a cap. Pop a cap in your head, and he don't have to have any reason. He don't have to explain his reasons. He don't have to give you due process. He don't have to give you nothing. Well, let me ask you a question. Let's look back in our history just a short way at some of the tyrants that we went in using the help of the CIA and even on some occasions, like in Grenada, American troops, okay? In other countries, American troops to bring down dictators because they thought they had the right to kill any one of their citizens they pleased or as many as they pleased. By golly, does this sound familiar? This was passed by presidential executive order. Congress didn't approve this. Your representatives didn't approve it. Your senators didn't approve it. He granted himself that ability. What keeps anybody from busting my door in right now and popping a cap in my head because I'm a danger to them? This show right here is a danger to them. My freedom of speech, I'm exercising the hell out of it. But on some level, if we go back to HR 347, I could be in the shits. Does it scare me? No, it doesn't. I'm 59 years old. I spent 30 years traveling around this world. I have done more and seen more than any 50 sheeple have, and I'm aware of more. So at this point in my life, this is what I need to do. But what about you people who have families, who have young children, who aren't more than your mid-20s yourself right now, or your late teens, or college students? How does this affect you? Are you going to be afraid to talk now? Again, they're not going around practicing this everywhere. They're not doing that. But what's to say when enough of us, and I see it happening, I see the tide rising, when enough of us decide enough is enough, that they won't pull out this executive order. That they won't pull out the NDAA. I need to ask you a question, people. Why are there 600 plus, and anybody who thinks this is a joke needs to get your head out of your ass, internment camps that are active and empty in this country? Well, gee, we have active, empty internment camps. We have the ability of the president to go around and round up anybody he says is seditious and an enemy of the state and lock them away forever. 1 and 1? Yep, that makes 2. It really does. All of this stuff is interconnected. It's all being done for a reason. The president has also made law his power to declare a national emergency. And who defines what a national emergency is, Paula? He does.
He does.
Yes. It's defined by him. Or he can declare martial law in an emergency. Guess who defines what that is?
Same dude.
Same dude. This gives him the ability to completely subjugate we the people via executive orders as no other president in our history has ever been able to do. This gentleman, and I use the term loosely, has signed over 1,000 executive orders since he has entered office. Probably well more than that, and I apologize, I don't know the exact number right now, and I feel seriously remiss. Usually I'm right on top of my facts, but I do know it's well over 1,000.
Yes, usually you have it in front of you.
And some of these have immense power centralizing implications. Now, what do I mean by immense power centralizing implications? It means that he's centralizing the power on him, on the few people who are his flunkies who answer to him, or on his brother and sister puppets whose strings are being pulled by the people who actually control Obama. Anybody who thinks that Obama got where he is today all on his own merit hasn't done any research on Obama at all. The fact that he is the president of the United States is astounding. It's amazing. It has nothing to do with his color. I am probably the least prejudiced person you will ever meet. My wife is Puerto Rican. My children are part black. Give me a freaking break. I don't care what color you are. But go through this guy's history. Go through his past. How the hell did he ever make president?
Sleight of hand magician work going on us.
And the people who pull his strings. All right, so he has signed over 1,000 executive orders. He's centralizing power on him and a few select people. And there's no clear definition of boundaries. The NDAA rule, or law, or rider. I'm going to throw you in prison. Where are the limits, the boundaries? Well, if they don't have to tell you what he did, and they don't have to bring him to court, and he's got no due process, there's no boundaries. If I'm going to go out and kill an American citizen, and all I have to do is say he was an enemy of the state, where are the boundaries? Throughout history, our leaders have had boundaries set to control the spread of tyranny in this country. Those boundaries are evaporating just like our rights and our freedoms are. Where are those boundaries he may not exceed? Now, I have a partial list here of some of his executive orders, and this is just a series of them, okay? They're all pretty closely related as far as the numerical sequence. I'm going to go through a couple of them real quick. I want you to pay special attention to EO, Executive Order, number 11,000. And we'll come back to that as soon as I've gone through the list. Okay, 10990 allows the government to take over all modes of transportation and control of highways and seaports. Now again, you have to understand that under emergency or martial law, he is a total dictator. This is his control. All right? 109995 allows the government to seize control of the communications media, every piece of media in this country. And I don't know if anybody's aware, but within the last week, he signed another executive order giving himself total control over all public media, all public and privately owned media via executive order. So he just reinforced this one. Okay? 10998 allows the government to take over all food resources and farms. They will control your food. If you control the food supply of a population, damn it, you control the population. If you control their media, then you control the propaganda machine. If you control all the population, they can't move around. You might as well have them trapped behind walls. All right, let's go to 11,000. Allows the government to mobilize civilians into brigades, work brigades under government supervision. They don't have to pay you. They can make you work at whatever they wish in any factor they want you to. These are mobilizing work brigades. If you think you're even going to get minimum wage, it's a fantasy.
I saw a bit about that recently.
He has the power to put you into these camps and put you to work. How many, just a little thought. I'm going to plant a germ of thought into your head. When these camps start to fill up, how many businesses and corporations, because this is a corporatist country, it's not a republic anymore. We are owned and run by the corporations. So is Obama. Yeah. How many of these large corporations are going to start to utilize the personnel in these camps as workforce? And the cost of their products, actually their profit margin will go up, will skyrocket. They don't have to lower the cost of the product. It's just that the labor force will be a hell of a lot cheaper when they're not being paid. Anybody who thinks I'm joking, I'm not. Look into for-profit prisons. They're all over this country. These were, in fact, the litmus test for what's coming. This executive order has serious implications. Let's go to 1101. 11001 allows the government to take over all health, education, and welfare functions. Oh my God. Could it get any worse? 11002 designates the Postmaster General to operate a national registration. You will be registered. They will know who you are, where you reside. No ands, ifs, and buts. 11003 allows the government to take over all airports, aircraft, including commercial aircraft. Yup, you ain't going nowhere. 11004 allows the Housing and Finance Authority to relocate communities. build new housing with public funds, designate areas to be abandoned, and establish new locations for populations. If somebody
Wow.
wants you, if some big corporation wants your land, or if the government has a better use for it, this tyrant just tells you your entire community is going to move. You're gone. There isn't a damn thing you can say about it. You have no control anymore. Private ownership of property will be, it'll be a joke. None of this is stranger than fiction, because all of this is reality. Look, anybody listening to this show, Paula has given you this essay, this commentary. Look these numbers up. The government is bought and paid for well over, and nobody knows the exact number, 600 internment centers built under contract by Halliburton Industries and their subcontractors, strategically placed around the country and capable of holding millions of, and here I use this word, sedition, patriots for forced re-education and relocation. I'm not making these words up or just putting them here because they sound good. This comes right from a document written by the DOD, Report FM 3-39.4D. I copied this from there. Please research this. It's freaking real. I'm not Rush Limbaugh. I'm really not. I'm not somebody here trying to scare the hell out of you by throwing things at you and propaganda at you to make you believe something that isn't true. These are all facts. Paula will tell you, you ought to know by now. This is the third show we've done. I believe in statistical correctness. I believe in not only giving you information, but telling you where you can find out whether or not I'm handing you a line of crap. This is reality. If it doesn't scare the hell out of you, there's something wrong with you. Your right to reasonable privacy is gone. Okay? Through the Patriot Act, the government agencies, and oh my God, have we heard enough about this lately? They listen into everything you do.
Yeah, they do.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. If it involves any kind of electronic medium, whether it's a telephone, your cable box spies on you now. If you think I'm joking, I can prove that. Your smart meter, your cable box, your telephone, your wireless phone, your iPhone, your computer. You want the list to go on? Your car. They all spy on you now. It's supposed to be illegal. But it's not. Because do you find any court upholding any lawsuits against the government for this? Or are most of these cases that people attempt to bring against them thrown out as being superfluous? Judges love that word superfluous. If you walk in to talk to a judge into court and you start talking to a judge and your facts are not 100% in line, at any point, he can look at you and say, your argument is superfluous. As soon as he mentions that word superfluous, your case is done. Pack your briefcase up or your valise and leave. Because not another thing you're going to say is going to matter at all in that case. The word superfluous is his way of saying you don't know what you're talking about, or you're not good enough at the law and you made an oops. So your right to privacy? Forget about it. What about 30,000 drones that the government has stated they will have in American airspace within the next few years? Or the 64, it was 63, now it's 64. Drone command centers spread out across the country. What the hell do we need 64 drone command centers spread out across the United States for? I warned them. But none of this is hyperbole. None of this is fiction.
It's all fact.
The government is actively hiring tens of thousands of goons and thugs from the dregs of society and ex-military people. Okay? And in some cases, even employing active military personnel, including TSA and Homeland Security. That's how they're staffing these goon squads. These troops will be armed as well as our combat soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. Any one of you in there right now listening knows you've seen articles about the government buying light armored vehicles, body armor, AR-15s, which they're assault rifles for us, they're self-protection rifles for them. Where's the hypocrisy there? No, there is none. If we own it, it's an assault rifle. If they own it, it's self-protection. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay? These troops are going to be armed as well as our best combat troops. The ones we're using to fight the illegal imperialistic wars we're waging all across an entire region of the globe. They have 2.2 billion rounds of ammunition, more than enough to wage war at the peak of the Iraq war for 10 years. All the bullets we fired at the peak of the Iraq war each year, there is more than enough ammo, way more than enough, to wage that war for 10 full years. That's how much ammo the government has ordered at this point. And to this day, we don't know how much of it they've actually stockpiled. Of which a significant portion of that, and you all know this, is 40 caliber hollow point bullets, outlawed by the Geneva Convention, illegal to use in warfare against our most hated enemies. But yet our government is buying them to use against American citizens. Because the TSA and Homeland Security, who are being armed with these weapons and this ammunition, only has one responsibility: you and me. They're not going to shoot anybody else. Now, this list is long, okay? But it is nowhere near the total list. I want to go through maybe one more, because I know we started late, so we're going to go an extra couple minutes. Paula, you tell me when I have to cut off, okay? The Supreme Court gave us a bombshell the other day. You no longer have the right to remain silent. No, I'm not joking. You don't. And if you want to research the court case, it is the Supreme Court's decision in Salinas versus Texas. And it doesn't mean you don't have the right to remain silent. It means that you can't just be silent and it will be assumed anymore. You will be assumed guilty. Read the court case. Salinas versus Texas. And I believe I've got an article in the government section on this. Okay? And it is called Supreme Court Bombshell, No Right to Remain Silent. Or something like that. You must declare when you're arrested or when you go to court, you must declare that you are exercising your right not to incriminate yourself. Exercising your right to remain silent. Just doing so now is no longer good enough. If you do not declare it verbally or in writing, you are assumed to be guilty. I'm serious. So your right to remain silent, out the door. How many people are going to be aware that they have to declare that? How many, and I don't mean stupid, and I'm not besmirching these people, how many ignorant people, those who lack knowledge, are not going to be aware that they have to do this? Did you see this splashed across the MSN? Is there a flyer going out to every house in the country? Your Miranda rights have just been chewed up and spit out. So there's another one. One after another, they are all being resigned to the scrap heap of obsolescence. I apologize, really do. This has been a little heavier than I usually rant, but they're all going to get worse from here. This is the least significant of the ones we're going to talk about. Next week's rant is going to have twice the intensity of this one. But please remember something, and I always like to finish a rant with a positive note, okay? Because there's a solution to everything. As bleak as this seems, there is, in fact, hope. Regardless of their power and their preparation, the most powerful force in this country has always been and remains today 320 million Americans. One voice can speak, but many Unified voices can roar, and damn it, it's time for we the people to roar. Together, we constitute an unstoppable and an unbeatable force, and we cannot be silenced. We need to get off our ass, and we need to do something. We need to push. We've talked about a lot of our rights, a lot of our freedoms that are gone. Everything we talked about today is gone. It's not things that are eroding. It's not things they're trying to take away from us. They are gone. And should they ever choose to enforce it, they already have the laws or the executive orders on the books. Please, my friends, wake up. Pass this essay out if you would. Do some research on it. I dare you to try and find holes in it as I do every week. This screams, just utterly screams tyranny. Does anybody disagree with that? I'm going to go back and end this show with the just my thoughts of yesterday. When it becomes seditious to speak the words or practice the concepts our founding fathers fought and died to bequeath to us,